I'm Tim Harrison. I'm the Managing Director of Ionic Rare Earths. We're developing a project in Uganda, an ionic adsorption clay rich in magnet and heavy rare earths, and looking at taking that product downstream into Western markets.
Western markets, they'll be glad to hear that. How are you, mate?
Very good, Matt.
Okay, we're in Indaba, one-to-one, lots of people meeting. In fact, I think benchmarks are here as well on the lithium side. Lots of people getting super excited about Africa, including our dear friends in the US. You've been having some interesting conversations, haven't you?
Yeah, we've a lot of engagement there. That's really looking very promising. I think they're excited about the opportunity to get access to magnet and heavy rare earths, proven ionic adsorption clay product, and get those elements into the supply chain in the US. The Europeans are also very keen as well. So, there's a bit of discussion happening in Europe as well.
See, that's the interesting bit, right? You said proven. So we're not having a conversation technically about, is this possible? How does it work? What is it? You're having conversations which are a bit more commercial leaning. You're about to submit the feasibility study. How's that going?
Yeah, it's good. So we're getting very, very close. We've been waiting for the Ugandan government to finalise their submission portal on recent changes to the Mining Act. So we expect that by the end of this week we'll be ready to upload those documents. We've still got to complete an ore reserve estimate and get that out to the market, and then we'll be in a position to release our study to the market and talk about the project economics at that point in time.
Okay, I want to come to that. So, so the Ugandan government is going to be ready to receive if you're ready to submit with the feasibility study, right?
Yeah, we've already been working with the Ugandan government since the start of September on the mining lease application. So we've provided them with initial documentation so that they can start getting their head around, the way in which we envisage developing Makuutu, getting into production, and potentially scaling up substantially in time.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. I want to know, will you be submitting next week? If it's ready at the end of this week, will you be submitting next week? Because there's a few things that need to kind of go in at the same time. Are you ready?
Yes. All the documents are lined up and ready to go. So we're just waiting. We're being a partner in the process and working closely with the Ugandan government on that.
Okay.
They've been very, very supportive through social media as well, I think. And I think that gives an indication of the relationship that we've got with the Ugandan government. And recently we renewed a retention licence that was renewed within 8 days. So there's a lot of support there.
Right. Okay. So you're ready to go. So you must have some sense of what the economics are looking at, or a firmer sense of what the economics look like. When are you going to be positioned to kind of share that with the market or explain those?
Look, hopefully we're not very far away from being able to do that. I'm waiting on competent people to finalise all the documentation for the ore reserve estimate and the project team to get that closed out and submitted to the board. Hopefully that's not very far away either.
Okay, so feasibility study process in terms of approvals is how long? It's not going to be 8 days.
No. I think for the mining lease application, the mining licence application, we're expecting we'll have that by the end of March.
Okay.
That's the dialogue that we've had with the Ugandan government.
Okay. And at that point, are you done and hosed? Is that it? No more licences, permits required?
Well, we're working through a mineral development agreement now with the Ugandan government as well, which will set the fiscal terms for the project.
What does that mean?
So potentially there's an option for the government to have a free carry or an interest up to 15%.
Why wouldn't they? It's free.
Well, everything's negotiable, and that's what the Ugandan government has spoken to us about. They want to build a mining industry. They want to attract international investment. Right. They want to be, raise the profile of Uganda being open for exploration and mining. I think there's a mechanism here where we can be partners in promoting Uganda through a fair mineral development agreement that makes sure that there's enough benefit for both groups moving forward.
Right. Okay. So we've talked technically in the past about what it is and how it works. You've obviously got to then build the facilities on site, and as a relatively nascent industry, so in Uganda. In terms of being able to access the capital, i.e. people looking to Uganda, is that an investable country? How are those conversations going?
I would say we've certainly spoken with a number of groups now who are becoming more comfortable with Uganda, more comfortable with Africa. So I think we're going to be in a position where I don't think financing this project is going to be an issue. It's more around mapping out where the product is going to go. Where that product is going to go is potentially going to open up other opportunities to fund Makuutu and also work on the supply chain.
Okay, you referenced it at the beginning, we talked about it at the beginning, and we've seen it ourselves. There's a big contingent from the US here. Rare earths is meaningfully part of the dialogue in terms of critical minerals at the moment. So are you sensing that you're looking to push product into the US because that's where the biggest pockets lie of capital, right? Or are we, because you're in, is it Northern Ireland you're in? For the magnet recycling?
Yep.
That's Northern Ireland, Belfast, right? Europe seems slightly behind the curve at the moment, or is that, do you feel that's not the case? In terms of capital,
I think publicly,
yeah,
maybe, but I think, they did release a package last week, I think it was, 390 odd billion euro, which I think that Europe will come with a lot of activity through this year. Okay. We're in discussions with obviously the US and European groups on how we can help get our product into the market. But in order to get the product into the market, there has to be somebody who can process it.
Yeah.
And that's where these discussions are now at, is how do we separate and refine a Makuutu basket, because it's got a basket of elements there that there's not the refinery capacity existing today to be able to separate it in Europe or the US.
Right.
So we have to work with a partner on helping them build that capacity, and I think there's a big opportunity there for us.
Isn't that a harder path for you? Because the Chinese have got it all covered, right? Lights, heavies, done.
Yep.
Right, and the technical know-how to do so. And it would seem like, well, let's just fit into the market. In fact, for some of our earlier conversations, said, well, that's probably the likely route. But Europe and US are now sort of clamouring for this stuff. Could that hold you back?
I think there's mechanisms there where we can work on the timeline that we're working to with groups in both the US or Europe to build that capacity.
Okay. The reason I ask is because we had conversations with bankers out of the US saying if there's any component that has a dependency on China, we're out. Okay? So you've got to make conscious decisions about where you go. So I'm saying one's an easy path, known path, and the other is slightly more complicated, but probably might be better for you in the long run.
And I think greater upside.
You're right.
And we've got a long life asset at Makuutu. We're not thinking short term. Yeah. This is long term upside. This is positioning ourselves to benefit from being a participant in those new traceable, secure supply chains into Western markets.
Okay. Talk to me about Belfast. We just referenced it. Belfast. Is that still? Where is that in terms of priority list? Because it's small. It's great technology. Yep. But it's small, and yes, it kind of announces you on the stage in terms of Europe. But it's hardly the revenue spinner, and maybe it's a distraction. And how are you feeling about it?
I wouldn't say it's a distraction. I think it's a potential unlock. I think the recycling of magnets is overlooked. I think when you look at the production of magnets, and there's going to be more magnets made, when a magnet is made, not all of the material, the inputs, actually end up as a magnet. A lot of it ends up as waste. That material gets recycled. At the moment, 40% of the world's current magnet rare earth supply chain is recycling. So I think there's a big opportunity there. I think there's an opportunity for us to look at scaled up facilities across maybe the US and Europe, where we can start to make the oxides and work in partnership with metal makers and alloy makers to make the magnets to go into the motors to help show EV companies how we can build a supply chain together. So I think it's a way for us to start participating in the supply chain at smaller scale, working with partners in metal making and alloy making, where we can develop the IP and the transparency on the costs, which is what effectively the EV companies want to understand how they're going to build their supply chains.
Okay. And then at some point in the future, as you say, oh, by the way, we've also got this thing over
Well, this
here.
Makuutu is the long life.
Yeah, right.
But you've got to help to build that supply chain. And I think the recycling is a mechanism for us to unlock it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell me about how people do get a sense of what Makuutu could be, because you're going to need to build a few facilities for them to be able to process it as much as you need to at your end, to be able to then give bulk samples to various people to say, well, this is how we do it, maybe, or do you just pick one partner and say, right, it's there, it's massive, but you need to get your kind of capital together to kind of build out what you need, and we'll work with you on that one, and hopefully do it within a timeline which kind of matches up with ours. How's that conversation evolved?
There's several discussions underway at the moment,
right,
across all of that.
Bit early, right? It's early at the moment.
I think we're working towards a bit of a very common vision. Yeah. Right. So I think we do understand there are groups now that could help us to process our product when we start
with a
Makuutu
balance
initially.
sheet that matches the potential of the size of the project that you've got, because they say it's huge. So they got the balance sheet?
They're big companies.
Big companies, okay. No clues. Poker face.
Well, it's too early to say, but I'd love to be able to.
Okay, you're talking to the right people. You make it. So how long does that process drag on for? Because if I'm a shareholder, I'm looking at, I make my money when I sell your shares if they've gone up, right? I'm interested in what are the moments, the drivers this year in 2023. Everyone at the conferences are super pumped. Not surprised, because 2022 was brutal for everyone.
Yep.
Right, brutal. So from a low base, people are expecting some sort of reaction from the marketplace that, we're expecting a soft landing in the economy. Recession is not a word you hear so much, inflation coming down. So it was all the right narratives are out there, but you've got to take advantage of that. So this year, what are the things that you're going to do or be able to announce which will deliver on that kind of growth story again?
So I think the big one for us is going to be the mining licence.
For sure.
Mining licence at Makuutu. Mm-hmm. We are in discussions with our partners in Renzori about potentially increasing our ownership.
Okay. Why?
Because I think some of our strategic partners downstream in the US would like for us to mop up 100% of the asset.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be an important thing. Now, we're in discussions with our partners now. I think there's a common vision. Mm-hmm. There's alignment on where we want to go. So hopefully we're able to do something soon. I think the magnet recycling, the demo plant in Belfast this year, is going to be a catalyst for us to start making oxides, to be able to start putting that into.
Okay, so I shouldn't ignore that.
That's
got purpose.
Exactly. That's an unlock. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for us in helping to build out that supply chain. And I think as we move further downstream, we put a bit more colour around what that looks like. Hopefully we're in a position where we can talk publicly about our strategies for the US.
Well, I think for me that's the kind of key here is trying to understand the opportunity in the US or Europe, wherever, but it's contracts or JVs or strategic partnerships or access to capital to really kind of scale this thing up. Talking about a big project and delivering a big project, two different things, right? So that this year is, I suspect, what people want to see from you, and it's definitely what I'd like to see from you. But those things, I also appreciate those things take time. So where do you think you are in terms of that kind of step change moment? Okay,
so I think, we're going to put out economics on the project.
Right.
And we'll be able to talk about where we see the project and the funding.
But on the economics, right? We've already put out economics on the project. It's like, how different do you think that needs to be to get a noticeable change or get an inflection point in terms of people's perception of your value?
I think once we can identify and speak publicly about our strategies of going downstream, I think that everything changes there.
Okay.
I think that's because not all rare earth projects are created equal.
For sure.
Some of them have a greater strategic need in the basket of elements they produce.
And we're talking about the difference between lights and heavies? Very
much so.
Okay.
Lights are excessively, and there's no shortage of light rare earth projects out there.
Yeah.
What there is not an abundance of is heavy rare earth projects. It's a very short list. I think recently we saw, one of our peer projects in Brazil received a $150 million investment from Vision Blue and EMG. So I think it's an indication of how important ionic adsorption clay deposits are. There are not many of these proven assets around.
But how do you, as a company, you as a CEO, say someone like Vision Blue, we're real, okay? There's a lot of chat in the market. I say, not everyone's going to be able to move things along. How do you say, trust us, we're real, we've got the heavies, high margin stuff here, and we've technically cracked the code here, and we have inserted ourselves into the ecosystem of companies that will get into production, will have some economic reality to it. What do they need to hear from you?
I think you've got to make the product. You've got to, we're going to build a demo plant here at Makuutu.
Yeah.
We're going to make...
Remind us of the timing?
We're planning on having that operating for the rest of this year, producing product so that we can start placing that with groups on our downstream.
Are you funded for that?
We've got money in the bank. We've got 20 million in the bank as of the end of...
Is that enough to get product in people's hands?
That'll do a lot of the heavy lifting on that demonstration plant.
Is that mostly? I'm trying to get a straight answer.
Well, look,
is it enough to get product into people's hands, or will you need to raise more money?
That's enough to get product into people's hands.
Perfect. Good, because they can make decisions at that point. Commercial decisions, economic decisions, involving dollars.
Well, that's right.
What you want, right?
And I think the other thing is through the course of this year, we'll be producing oxides in Belfast. With those oxides, we can start to work with metal makers, alloy makers, magnet makers on demonstrating ex-China supply. And it's not just NdPr, we're talking DyTb. DyTb is the two elements that really are going to be extremely hard to find by the end of this decade for the ex-China supply chains. Dysprosium and terbium, they're magnet rare earths used in the production of magnets that operate at high temperatures. So if there's no DyTb, the magnet will start to demagnetise at a much lower temperature, which means the motors, the wind turbines, can't operate at the temperatures required to drive the efficiency. So
we see what happens then, don't we?
Well, you just drive along and that's it. That stops.
Yeah. And big market for that, you think, or growing market for that?
I think we saw some recent numbers from a forecast from Adamas that sort of suggested by 2035, the market for NdPr had to basically replicate the existing market for China now.
Yeah.
But the market for DyTb, we effectively need 5 Chinas.
That's a lot of Chinas.
Right. So there's a lot of that's a lot of production.
Yeah.
In a very, very hard, heavy rare earths are very hard to find
in a short space of time.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting times ahead. Well, there's the challenge for you this year. You've got a lot to communicate this year. So there's a lot of news flow. You've got to make it important news flow rather than just kind of filling the space. So it sounds like you've got a few things lined up. I'm excited for you.
No, look, it's not boring.
No, it's kind of rarefied air to be able to be, because it's like, as I say, not all companies are created equal. Lots of new entrants into the space with not necessarily people who've ever done it before, but talking a good game, and even some of the advanced plays are starting to perhaps struggle a little bit to get over the line. So it'll be interesting to see how the total market for rare earths evolves in terms of supply, ex-China. This year for sure, but look, appreciate your time, man.
Thanks,
Good luck and good luck with your conversations at the conference.
Thank you.